Hey everybody, and welcome back to For the B-oos. Oh, that was good.
I knew I could pull it off.
I mean, I only say the same thing every week.
I know. I wonder if anybody out there listening says it along.
That would be awesome to know.
Welcome back to For the B-oos. Go team.
Oh my God.
Anyways.
Hey everybody.
We are back.
We are.
And we're back on kind of a normal episode. We're talking about a place.
Yeah.
We're going back to a place.
A location.
I feel like we haven't done one in a while.
I know.
I think it's actually been a while. So we are going to go back to normal. As for next week, it's looking like, I'm not going to say, we might be doing an interview next week. So if you like those kinds of episodes, you can look forward to that. As long as everything works out, that's what we should be doing. I'll find out soon. But anyways, this week, it's getting warm out.
It is.
It sucks.
Except in the basement.
It's warm out. It feels great.
It's cold out.
It feels amazing. But I thought, well, let's travel somewhere tropical.
Oh,
let's talk. Let's go somewhere where the sun shines and the beach waves are crashing. And let's head on over to Jamaica.
Hey.
We've never done a Jamaica before.
I know.
But we are going to a very, very popular vacation spot called Montego Bay. Montego Bay, Jamaica. And we're going to talk about the infamous
Rose Hall Plantation.
That's right. Rose Hall Plantation, also known as, I believe it was Cinnamon Hill, I believe. Don't quote me on that. It was when Johnny Cash lived there.
Yeah.
So this place has a lot of claims, a lot of interesting stories, and a lot of different versions of the story.
Okay.
So there may be times where it gets confusing, but I will break it down at the end, and I will tell you why it's confusing.
All right.
But there's quite a bit to it, and it's in a country during a time period where they probably really didn't keep any records.
Yeah.
It's during the time of slavery in an island. I don't know. There are just a lot of different stories when it comes to this place, more than I was anticipating.
All right. Well, I'm excited.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's get the ball rolling and let's start talking about the history.
In Montego, Key Largo.
Baby, why don't we go? Don't get us copyright strike.
I know.
Don't do that.
I'm sorry. I couldn't help myself.
And away we go. Montego Bay is the capital of the parish of St. James in Jamaica. The city is the fourth largest urban area in the country by population, after Kingston, Spanish Town, and Portmore, all of which form the greater Kingston metropolitan area, home to over 500,000 people. As a result, Montego Bay is the second largest Anglophone city in the Caribbean, after Kingston. Montego Bay is a popular tourist destination featuring duty-free shopping, a cruise line terminal, and several beaches and resorts. The city is served by Donald Sangster International Airport, the busiest airport in the Anglophone Caribbean, which is located within the official city limits. The city is enclosed in a watershed drained by several rivers, such as Montego River, and Montego Bay is referred to as the second city, Mo Bay or Bay. The earliest known inhabitants of this island were the Taino from South America, who arrived on the shores in the 8th century. By the time Columbus arrived, first in 1494 and more significantly in 1502, it is estimated that the Taino population had reached around 100,000. It was the Spanish who first started importing African slaves, yet they never completely exploited Jamaica as there was a greater attraction in the riches of South America. In came the British, first ousting the Spanish by allying with lawless pirates to ensure victory. Spanish finally fled via what is still called Runaway Bay, and later by realizing the value of sugar plantations. With the Taino population having dwindled under Spanish rule, labor was needed. So in were brought an estimated 600,000 African slaves, most of whom were bought by trading manufactured goods from Britain. Something like 1 in 5 died on the way there, the rest subjected to inhumane, brutal treatment on the plantations, where they were owned by plantation bosses. Slaves were traded like commodities. Their lives were expendable, their welfare irrelevant. The brutality and oppression suffered by the slaves is unimaginable, as is the callous way it was dished out by those in power, seeking riches. The story of Rose Hall Plantation goes as follows. Jamaica was like many of the islands in the Caribbean in that it was a slave colony. Britain took over the island in 1655, and under its rule, Jamaica became a leading sugar exporter, with a plantation economy dependent on the African slaves and their descendants. At one time, there were around 700 large manor houses on the island. Rose Hall was an impressive Georgian-style great house built around 1750 on a rising hill that gives it an amazing view of the sea. During the Slave Rebellion of 1831, almost all of the manor houses were burned down. Today, there only remain about 15. Rose Hall survived the burnings only because the slaves were too afraid of the ghostly legends and scary tales surrounding the house. Now, according to legend, Annie had moved with her family to Haiti as a child, where she learned the secrets of voodoo from her nanny. After her parents and nanny died, she moved to Jamaica at the age of 18, looking for a husband. She married John Palmer, the last owner of Rose Hall. After a few months, Annie grew tired of her husband and began to choose lovers from among the 2,000 slaves of the plantation. When Palmer caught her, he beat her with a whip. But the very next day, he was dead, seemingly poisoned. With his death began the years of terror at Rose Hall. Annie would take slave lovers, but as soon as she tired of them, she would kill them. She also regularly tortured and killed anyone who she felt was an enemy to her. She married twice more, killing both husbands to inherit their money. Annie Palmer loved the color red, the color of blood and passion. And though she never bore children, she supposedly had a portrait painted to convince people she was indeed the motherly type. Nothing, of course, could be farther from the truth. When people look closely at the children in the painting, they seem stiff and unnatural, and overly posed. They possess none of the vibrancy and realism of the scarlet-clad Annie. In all likelihood, they were modeled on dolls, and here they remain wooden props in Annie's unconvincing efforts to seem human. But if you find yourself walking beneath the painting, you will notice that Annie's eyes will follow you as you move, for she is still keeping watch on everything in the house as a, quote, duppy. Now, duppy is the Jamaican term for a ghost or a malevolent spirit. They can manifest in human form or in animal form. According to tour guides, duppies often take the form of bats, so if you happen to see a bat flying low at twilight, beware. Like most people who live lives of utter debauchery and sin, Annie Palmer eventually received her karmic punishment. After dispatching of 3 husbands and instigating a reign of terror on the plantation, one of her former slaves, Taku, decided he'd had enough. Now, her undoing was falling in love with an Englishman who did not want her because he was in love with the niece of the slave named Taku, who, of course, was Annie's lover. Now, Annie killed her young rival, which angered Taku so much that he strangled her and buried her deep in a pit. He performed a voodoo ritual meant to prevent her spirit from leaving the grave, but he didn't complete it properly, and her ghost began to wander the house. Now, because of this, the house was spared burning during the rebellion because it was feared that the fire would free the ghost and allow it to wander off the plantation. Instead, the house was abandoned and remained so for about 130 years. Now, there was one family who did try to live at Rose Hall in the early 1900s, but they were swiftly driven from the place when their maid was thrown from a second-story balcony by an invisible set of hands. Not only is the balcony the site of the poor maid's death, but it was the very spot where Annie herself would stand to enjoy the spectacle of her slaves being tortured, which occurred in the yard below. After someone had been tortured to Annie's satisfaction, they would be led down a set of steps to the dungeon below, where without food, medicine, or water, they would die in a matter of days. The truth is much less interesting than fiction. Now, the land, 290 acres of cane land, was bought by Henry Fanning for about £3,000 in 1742. It was previously called True Friendship and had belonged to Richard Lawrence. Now, Henry married Rosa Kelly on July 16, 1746, but he died soon afterwards. His widow inherited the estate and married George Ashe, a local plantation owner who realized Fanning's plan to build Rose Hall. It cost about £30,000 to build and was lavishly decorated with carved mahogany and stone. However, Ashe died in 1752. Rosa married for a third time to Norwood Witter in May 1753, who lived until May 20th, 1765. Managing to consume a significant amount of her fortune. In May 1767, she married John Palmer, a widower who owned the adjoining plantation Palmyra. Rosa died in 1790, leaving her property to her husband. When Palmer died in 1797, he left the property in trust to his two sons, John and James Palmer. However, they died childless, and in 1818, the two estates were passed down to John Rose Palmer, his grandnephew. John Rose Palmer came to Jamaica from England to claim the estate, and on the 28th of March, 1820, he married Anne Marie Patterson from Lucia, Hanover Parish. Now, John Rose Palmer would die in November of 1827. Rose Hall Estate had about 650 acres divided among sugarcane, grass, and pasture for over 270 head of cattle. About 250 enslaved Africans were housed on Palmyra Estate, which comprised of about 1,250 acres. Now, Annie was actually born in Jamaica to Scottish parents. She had not grown up in Haiti, nor was she an expert in voodoo. She was only married once to John Palmer. Now, very little is really known about the couple other than they didn't stay in Rose Hall for long because their house was turned over to creditors due to massive debt. It sat abandoned and crumbling until it was bought in 1977 by former Miss USA Michelle Rollins and her entrepreneur husband John Rollins. Now, they refurbished it at great personal expense and conceptualized a tour and museum that would showcase Rose Hall's slave history, antique splendor, and original fittings. Rose Hall offers night tours that focus on Annie Palmer's legend, and supposed locations of tunnels, bloodstains, hauntings, and a of course, murders. Seances are also held on the property in an attempt to conjure Annie's spirit. Daily tours are offered of the house and grounds by costume interpreters. There are even night tours that focus on the legend of the White Witch. And that is the Out of Sorts history. And this is just 2 versions of it. There are many more.
That is you said the word, out of sorts. That is, it seems like all over the place. At first I was like, dang, this lady's crazy. Like, what is going on? And then it turns out to maybe not be like that.
It turns out to may not even be her at all. It actually turns out to where it might not actually be anybody. Wow. Because we're going to find out later at the end of this episode why it is like this. I did actually find the reason why it became like this, why there's so many different things that are being said.
Wow.
And this place has been on a lot of TV shows. I mean, just
it definitely
just
has.
About every TV show I think has been here.
Yeah.
There's another big caveat at the end of this that I have to point out. That is a big deal about this story. That is true. It's 100% true. I read it on 1,000 different websites.
Wow.
I know it to be true. There's no question about it. I don't want to give too much away because it would definitely sway everybody's opinion right now.
Okay.
And I don't want to do that. But there are a lot of pictures. There's a lot of claims about this place. I can't stress that enough. There's a lot of pictures that are posted. Mm-hmm. There are specific items in the house that are referenced quite a lot.
Is the painting one of them?
Honestly, no.
Oh.
There's a mirror in Annie's bedroom, and it's called Annie's Mirror. Mm-hmm. And supposedly when people take pictures of the mirror, a face shows up. However, I have a rebuttal for that, too. Because we watched it.
Yeah.
Remember, we watched the Ghost Hunter International the other day. Yeah, we went back. We went back and watched some old stuff.
We did.
I was really just trying to put stuff on to... Megan works while I do the research for the show and edit and stuff. So, like, if I have an opportunity to show her something before we do it to kind of, just get her up to speed on what we're talking about, I will.
Yeah, because most of the time I have no idea what's going on when
until we sit down.
Yeah. And as I'm reading it, that's when I find out. So I find out along with you guys.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's just... We've never done a location that has so many different scenarios going on. Mm-hmm. Because the story that's been told and why it's haunted is so outlandish. I didn't even get into the details of it, because there are detailed stories of what Annie, quote, quote, Annie did to the slaves and stuff. But after finding the actual history, I don't really want to put that in here, because while it is a gruesome tale and it would have made my story longer, it doesn't seem relevant if it didn't happen.
Right. And if it did happen, WTF, bro. Like, that is...
Well...
I don't know.
Again, we're going to have to find that out after this ad break.
And now, Booze Crew, back to the episode. By day, the Rose Hall Mansion on Jamaica's northern coast stands as a perfect mix of 1700s Georgian architecture and the country's enthralling natural beauty. By night, what has become of one of Jamaica's most popular tourist destinations becomes a ghoulish reminder of Jamaica's morbid history. The estate lies in an exclusive Jamaican enclave east of Montego Bay. It was completed in the 1770s, fully restored in the 1960s, and is home to some of the best views of the northern coast, as it is set up on a hillside overlooking the Caribbean. Originally part of a sprawling 650-acre estate, The property's story is also steeped in Jamaica's dark history, as the estate included over 250 slaves who worked mostly on the surrounding sugarcane fields. According to Rose Hall's famous legend, the spirit of Annie Palmer haunts the grounds as the White Witch. As the story goes, Annie was born in Haiti and was a voodoo practitioner. She moved to Jamaica and Rose Hall with her husband, John Palmer, but allegedly murdered him soon afterward. She wasn't done there, according to the legend, as she married 2 more times, with each of those husbands suffering a similar fate to the first at Rose Hall. Adding horrific ambiance are the murders of slaves who fell victim to the witch. Although it is said that her reign of terror eventually ended by the same slaves she mistreated, she is said to still haunt the grounds, and photos of a ghostly apparition, believed to be Annie, adorn the entrance hall. There are, as with most legends, many variations to the story of the White Witch of Rose Hall. But there are common threads that run through all versions. It is these common threads that will be used to tell the story here. The seeds of the legend were sown in 1868 when a Falmouth newspaper editor published a booklet containing many of the elements of the current tale. The difference was that this story had Rosa Palmer as the White Witch, and the murders and other terrible deeds attributed to her. The fact that she had actually had 4 husbands helped to give the story some credibility, and, as happens with legends, others added their own parts to the story. In 1911, a book on the history of St. James was published, which retold the story, but with Annie as the central figure. Then, in 1929, Annie Palmer's fate was forever sealed, as fact and fiction became forever entwined in the Herbert G. Delisser novel, The White Witch of Rose Hall. It seemed to matter not to people that this was a work of fiction. Whatever elements had been left out of the legend by the other 2 erroneous publications had now been supplied, and people were happy to believe it. Johnny Cash and his wife, June Carter Cash, were 2 of the most iconic stars in the music business. They have forever embedded their legacy into our pop culture and society thanks to their music and charity work. While we got a glimpse of their personal lives through various interviews and the hit movie Walk the Line, starring Joaquin Phoenix and Reese Witherspoon, there's another side to the Cash family that not many know about. Johnny and June owned a large plantation mansion known as Rose Hall Great House of Montego Bay, Jamaica. When disobedient slaves were punished, they were reportedly placed in the dungeon underground and tortured. It was built in the 1700s, and it was one of the few homes to survive the Great Jamaican Slave Revolt of 1831 and 1832. Out of the 700 plantation houses that once stood, only 15 remain today. Rose Hall was one of those survivors. Why? It is believed to be haunted by an angry, restless spirit by the name of Annie Palmer. It is believed that Rose Hall survived the revolt, because the slaves were scared of releasing the spirit of the White Witch out into the world. Or, at least, that's what the legends say. The name Annie Palmer probably sounds familiar because Johnny Cash wrote a song about her. But here's the big question. Did Johnny Cash have a paranormal experience while he was living at Rose Hall? The answer is yes. During a dinner party one evening, he saw the apparition of a woman in white. She was in her 30s, and she went into the dining room and towards the kitchen. In fact, Johnny wrote about his encounters with the spirits of Rose Hall in his biography. Quote,
"We've never had any trouble with these souls. They mean us no harm. I believe, and we're certainly not scared of them. They just don't produce that kind of emotion."
Also, keep in mind that Johnny Cash was a strong Christian. There's a chance he wasn't bothered by the spirits because he felt he was protected by Christ. With so many conflicting stories, it seems, we thought it'd be a good idea to see what visitors from around the internet had to say about this place. In March of 2022, Lisa L. from TripAdvisor.com writes, quote,
Did this tour because my daughter is a haunt nut. The house and grounds are amazing. The story is crazy. We did see the ghost. She is even in one of our pictures. I did not expect to be scared. But let's just say, by the end of the tour, I had held hands with everyone in our group.
In January of 2018, Pettit's 2018 on TripAdvisor.com writes, quote,
"One of the best tours of a great house on the island. Get a good feeling of paranormal activity. Take several photos of Annie's mirror. I took a few of a normal mirror. But when I got home and looked, one was much less than normal."
In February of 2017, Patricia M. on TripAdvisor.com writes, quote,
"This tour was very interesting, and some of my pictures, especially in the bedroom, showed white shadows that might have been spirit activity."
And one more from Tom N. on Google Reviews writes, quote,
"Had to book this once on the island. Ship did not offer this. Found a taxi driver. They are required to take you and wait for you to bring you back to the port. After 3 drivers, I found one that would do it for $200, plus gave him a $30 tip. Our group touring the house was 4 people at $20 per person. All questions answered, took as much time as needed. I think I got a ghost in one of the mirrors after viewing my pics. The views from the house were great. One thing that seemed out of place was the tables set up in the garden area to sell Jamaican souvenirs. They were not coming down on the prices."
Whether or not Rose Hall is truly haunted is hard to say for certain, as much depends on individual beliefs. Many people claim to have seen a shadowy figure dressed in a green velvet riding habit, riding a black horse across the estate grounds. Others say they have seen the figure of a woman dressed in all white on the stairs outside of the great house and have caught glimpses of the same figure moving about inside the building. There have also been reports of screams and the sound of running footsteps heard coming from various rooms throughout the house, especially the cellar area, which now serves as the gift shop. If you believe that the ghost of a black magic practicing husband-murdering, slave-beating woman who died almost 2 centuries ago roams the grounds, or you're more of a skeptic. Rose Hall is an amazingly restored 18th century plantation house that is worth visiting for the glimpse into the history it offers and the possibility of crossing paths with the White Witch of Rose Hall.
And that's all. That's part of, that's a few of the stories.
A little bit.
Because as you read, historically, they don't even believe it's Annie Palmer.
Right.
Like, according to records, she barely lived there.
Which
she wasn't there for very long.
Crazy. Then, like, was she that crazy for that little bit of time she was
But
there?
that's what I'm saying.
Like, all this took off?
Historically speaking, no, she wasn't. But if you go by the stories of the people it's passed down from generation that lived on the island,
right,
then yes, she was. But in the history books, Rosa would have been the one who did it. She was the one who was married multiple times.
Yeah.
She lived there longer.
Huh.
So it's very interesting. It seems that a book that was written came out and pointed the finger at Annie. And then, and from what I understand, I believe it was a fiction. It was a book of fiction.
Right.
But people didn't care. And she became the White Witch somehow.
Wow. That's crazy.
And if you watch shows like, I don't know, Ghost Adventures, which is, for all intents and purposes, the only one that I could find where they found a ton of evidence, of course.
Uh-huh. You don't say.
And there are a lot more brutal tales of Annie Palmer and what she did to these people. But it's Ghost Adventures, and I hate to say it, but I'm pretty sure that they embellish quite a bit.
Maybe a little, yeah.
Because I read a lot, and I didn't read half of this. Like, I didn't read some of the stuff that they claimed on the show. I'm just saying. But there's also other claims, because we've watched stuff about this place, and I remember the story of Annie Palmer. I would love to play the song from Johnny Cash because it is about her, but I don't want to get our show copyright stricken.
Boo.
Yeah, I'd like for you guys to be able to listen to this, so unfortunately I can't. But it is out there. Just look it up. It's Johnny Cash, and the song is Annie Palmer.
Huh.
It's very interesting. I listened to it.
No, did you?
Yeah, I did.
Oh my goodness. We're going to have to listen to it.
It's a very short song.
Huh.
It's a very short song. But
I wonder, are there any, like, I guess we talked about it in the beginning. I don't know why I was going to say that.
I mean, the records.
But, like, record keeping at the time.
Well, there are. They're just not great because of where and when. You're talking about a lot of this starts back in, the 16s and 1700s.
Yeah.
So record keeping, even in other places, like more established places, like the record keeping for that time is not great.
Also, it's like slave times.
Yeah.
And I mean, unfortunately, during those times, there was a lot of things that weren't done properly.
And we're talking like 100 years before, maybe, wait. When did this all go down again? I've read a lot of dates today.
Yeah.
1700s, I think, 1800s.
I think it was like
1800s. So you're talking about like all this would have been taking place, like starting long before slavery ended.
Right.
I don't know when it ended in Jamaica, honestly, but even by American standards, like this was in the midst of it. But while there are a lot of people who do believe the story, there's a lot of people who don't.
And that's fair.
But I will also add this, that just because I'm saying that the story could be made up does not take away about the fact that even the people who don't believe in the story of Annie Palmer still believe that this place is haunted.
That is.
I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, that is a very good point, because we have seen and watched, and we consume a lot of paranormal things, and this place has come up quite a bit.
Yeah,
like a lot.
For a while back anyway, it was kind of like a popular place, I would say, for people to go to. Now, I did look. I can only find a single EVP.
Ugh.
I don't know what it is.
What?
I haven't listened to it. Yeah, it's just the first one that pops up. I mean, I could probably dig through here, maybe find another one. I know if you go and watch Ghost Hunters International, I think they picked one up in that episode. But
Yeah.
this is the only one I could find right now.
Okay.
It's from a while ago. It is from Jessie Mom 89. They got like 24 subscribers, so maybe go help them out. It says, Great House Rose Hall EVP captured in White Witch's room. You will hear a... Not telling you. You didn't read that, did you?
No. No, I didn't. Your thumb was covering it.
It says no one else was at the house at this time. So, let's see. It's real quick, too. It's like 5 seconds.
Okay.
I'm going to play it back again.
I didn't hear anything. Can you turn it up a little bit?
Yeah.
Thank you.
There we go. All right, I'll do it one more time. Okay, that's it.
Okay, so was that not an actual person's voice in that?
No, she said she was alone. She said there was nobody else in the room.
So literally just something was like, thank you.
Yes.
Stop. That was so clear.
That's her claim. It's claimed that she was the only one in the White Witch's room doing an EVP thing.
Sitting, chilling, being quiet.
Yeah, just hanging out.
What?
And she caught a voice that says, thank you.
That was clear as day.
I mean, that's like a class S EVP. I mean, that's like, it sounds like somebody sitting next to her.
Top tier to deer.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
Wow.
If it's real, it's really impressive.
Super impressive. Are you kidding me? I literally thought that was her, and like the thump after was supposed to be something.
Nope. It was the thing. Thank you. But,
wow.
All right, so before we go into normally I would not tell you information, but I am on this one.
I want information.
Okay. Well, there are things that you need to know about this place.
Okay.
They offer a quote-unquote haunted ghost tour.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's not a ghost tour.
Meaning?
When you go and you read reviews from people, they call it a ghost tour, but it's a haunted house, basically. So you get brought through the house. I think it's like a 40-minute round trip.
Okay.
And there's like people dressed as ghosts jumping out at you.
Shut up.
Yeah. And I think that's important to let you know.
Okay. So like these people saying, "Oh, I caught a picture of something in the mirror."
Because there are legitimate what look like paranormal pictures online and at the house. I'm going
to say like everything that we've seen seems like a normal paranormal investigation.
Which maybe was done at a point in time.
Okay.
But I mean, I found these reviews back for 17 years.
Wow.
I found them.
Wow.
I found them from 17 years ago till current time.
That's crazy. That's a long time for the internet.
Yeah. I dug deep for this one, but I feel like it's important because to me, if your establishment is haunted, then why would you do that? You're ruining the possibility of people catching actual stuff.
I abso-freaking-lutely agree.
And you're doing yourself an injustice because a lot of people want to do a legitimate ghost tour. Mm-hmm. They don't want to go through a haunted house, and you shouldn't even be allowed to call it a ghost tour.
Yeah, no, not at all.
I'm not
make it be a haunted house.
Yeah, I'm not saying that like you can't do this. It's bad. You can't. No, you can. You own the place. Do whatever you want.
Just don't say it's a ghost tour.
Don't claim it's a paranormal event when it's a haunted house event.
Okay.
So with everything you've heard, I have to ask you a question.
Is it real?
I'm probably going to have to edit that sound down a little bit. It's really loud.
That was very loud.
Sorry. But with everything that you've heard, what do you think about Rose Hall?
Okay. So this place seems to have a lot of
stories, legend, lore behind it. We run into this quite a bit. However, I am going to say that the story of Annie Palmer may not be specific to this place, but I do believe that there is definitely a possibility of something being there because this place is so old.
Okay.
The decades upon decades upon decades of things this place has seen, through slavery times to, you know, the newer days, renovations, ghost tours, like whatever.
I mean, it's all stuff before that.
And just, I think I'm going to take it back to like the land.
Okay.
Like we talk about, like, and the energies that are left behind from just the absolute awful things that happened back in the day.
Yeah.
If you know what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
So
beating slaves and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, all those things, you know. I say yes. Yes, I do believe that this place is haunted.
Again,
is it Annie Palmer?
You have
probably not
thrown me off where I thought you were going. No. Okay.
I do. I think there is definitely a possibility that there is something here.
Okay.
But attributed to the land.
Okay.
What about you?
I'm going to say no.
Okay.
I'm immediately writing off the Annie Palmer story because according to records, she barely lived there. There was never anything on record about Rosa being a bad person. Now, something that you need to remember is that slavery is definitely wrong, but not all slave owners tortured and beat their slaves to death, you know, because they were part of their livelihood. They needed them there.
Right.
And I'm still not saying that that makes it okay, because it's never, slavery is bad. No matter how you look at it, it is freaking terrible.
Awful.
But I don't think Rose Hall, I'll say it like this. There's a possibility that every square centimeter of ground in the world could be haunted. Just depends on what happened in the past. But if I'm going by the story of the White Witch and Rose Hall in general, I would have to lean more into the no.
Okay.
Because according to records, it was built, people lived there for a little while, and then nobody lived there for a long, long time.
Right.
This house was abandoned for like 130 years. So if I take all that into consideration, and I don't believe that Annie Palmer haunts the place, I don't believe she did anything. I think she just, you know, lived there with her husband. I just don't see any of this being real. None of it. I don't see any of it being real. I just think it's a spooky old house that what really impresses me, we lived in Florida most of our lives. We know hurricanes, and I'm sure Jamaica gets its fair share of hurricanes and
I'm sure
monsoons. How the hell did this house stand the test of time with nobody living there?
That's a great question. That is a great question.
That's a bigger story, in my opinion, than Annie. Like, I think they continue this story of the White Witch today because it brings people. It sells. It's $20 a head to get in there, and people go to Jamaica to, you know, anybody who goes on a cruise. Most people who go on a lot of cruises end up going to Jamaica. It's usually either that's the destination or it's part of the destination.
Right.
It sells, and it's in a very touristy place, the Montego Bay. It sells. It keeps people coming in, and there's like, it's not the only, like, there's a museum there and stuff, but I don't know. There, to me, I'm taking the long-winded roundabout of saying that, like, it bothers me when people sell a fake story. And when we watched, even on a TV show, who, for all intents and purposes, kind of needs to embellish things, said they found nothing. Now, I don't want to forget the mirror thing. In the Ghost Hunters International video, they found out that people were taking a picture at a certain angle, and there was a vase in the background. That back then, you got to remember, the cameras weren't as high resolution as they are now.
Right. They were a lot crappier.
Yeah, and they were catching a reflection of a vase in the background that ended up looking like a face in the mirror. And people we even read it in one of the reviews. The girl said she kept catching like a white light.
Mm-hmm.
It's their flash. They debunked that one too. It's the flash on the camera.
Yeah.
So, I mean, almost everything that people say has been debunked.
Okay.
And that's, so, yeah.
So, nope.
I already said no. I said no when I started rambling. Which just bothers me because, like, there's so many different versions of this story, and everybody ignores the most important one, which is the actual history.
Yeah.
And this is why I like to do the history, right? Because stories are cool. Some of them are really creepy and they're like would make good movies and stuff. But at the end of the day, when we get done talking about it and we make a decision on what we think of a place, the history is important.
Yeah, absolutely it is.
And look how it came out in this one. So
and I'm in no way saying that the story of Annie Palmer is attributed to my decision in any way whatsoever.
No. I know. I get what you're saying. You're just saying the land and because of what happened there. I understand that, and I agree with that. But by that logic, I also think that every part of everywhere could be haunted.
Oh, yeah.
Because people die under tragic circumstances and all the time. So it just is what it is. We'll get a good one. And I already have an idea. If we don't have our interview next week, I have what I think will make an interesting story, and maybe next week we'll set sail on that one. But where can they find us?
They can find us on Instagram at @forthebooze_podcast and on Facebook at forthebooze.
You can also find us on Twitter at forthebooze, on YouTube at forthebooze. We are working on videos, and they will be coming soon. We have that figured out finally.
Yes.
You can also find us on TikTok and just Google us. We're everywhere at this point.
Booze,
yeah, it's For the Booze everywhere. And don't forget, if you have a listener suggestion or a story, because we'll keep pushing them.
Yes, we love the stories.
Or just to say hi, forthebooze12@gmail.com. And also,
that thing they can do?
5 stars, rate, and review.
That's right. And you can share it. Share it on your social media. Say, hey, this is what I'm listening to.
Yeah.
Maybe other people will like us.
Yeah, maybe you'll show somebody else their new favorite show. You never know. I mean, we're pretty bad at this, but maybe somebody will like us.
I mean, we're kind of cool.
I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't go that far.
As I said, kind of.
And don't forget, you can also help support us over on Patreon at For the Booze. And with that, it's time to give a shout out to Teresa O'Donnell.
Oh, Teresa.
Lovely lady, you.
Yes.
And Joe Mattern. Every time I say his name, I'm just going to say, Joe, you mattern to me.
Oh, that's sweet.
He's a cool guy. We've talked a few times. I like him. He's a good guy. But they gave us our first suggestions for videos, and those are the ones we are going to do first.
That's right.
I guess that's it. This is it.
I think that's it.
That's it. Take us out.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, so much for listening, and we will see you in the next one.
Bye. Don't go to the islands.